Oh gosh, good morning everybody. Here we are, the NAAC in New York, and what a wonderful morning it is. What a wonderful day. This is our earliest interview. So apologize for being a little bit behind our regular schedule, but I had to get coffee and wake up and stuff. I'm here with Vitor Gonçalves.
Hi.
And before we get started, I'm going to just read Vitor's bio. I know we're going to hear a bunch of music and talk about a lot of great stuff. I know I'm a little sleepy, but I'm very, very excited for this interview. And we were fortunate enough to see Vitor play last night and also sit in on the tune. He was gracious enough to let us play with him and his friends, and it was just a wonderful evening of music. So I'm really excited for the stuff that y'all are going to get to hear today. Vitor Gonçalves is a pianist, accordionist, composer, and arranger from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. After an illustrious career as an in-demand musician in Brazil, playing with such icons as Hermeto Pascoal, Bethânia, Itiberê Zwarg, and many others, he made the move to New York City, where he currently resides. We're here in his residence. Since arriving here in 2012, he has garnered much acclaim and built a star-lighted resume, including features in NPR's Jazz Night in America, hosted by Christian McBride, the New York Times, and Fox News, a frequent resident on the stages of jazz at Lincoln Center, the Jazz Standard, and the Jazz Gallery. He both leads his own projects and collaborates with figures in the New York scene such as Anat Cohen, Vinícius Cantuária, Anthony Wilson, Cyro Baptista, and others. He has also played in jazz festivals and venues around the world, such as Newport Jazz, Jazz à Vienne, Umbria Jazz Festival, Queen Elizabeth Hall in London, and the Coliseum in Lisbon, Portugal. Growing up in Rio de Janeiro, Vitor was infused with the rich traditions and colorful history of Brazilian music, taking up the guitar as his first instrument at age 10. As he dug deeper into his studies, he developed a taste for the music of the Brazilian songbook, particularly of Antonio Carlos Jobim and the Bossa Nova and post-Bossa generation. During this time, his father brought a keyboard for his sister, and while she never played it, Vitor stole it into her room and took it over and thus became a pianist. At age 18, he was tapped by Itiberê Zwarg, a longtime collaborator of the musical genius Hermeto Pascoal, to form an orchestra of young musicians to follow the lineage of his mentor's musical concepts. In this group, people were encouraged to play multiple instruments, so as it was, Vitor took up the saxophone as a tertiary instrument. It was in this environment that Vitor found the beginnings of his musical personality and his own voice, an environment that is rooted in the diversity of Brazilian culture, its rhythms, traditions, and rituals, and expressed with a complete palette of harmonic colors with a great emphasis on freedom and improvisation. Concurrently, Vitor began forming his own groups and collaborating with many others besides. I'm going to go ahead and go to Vitor moved to New York in 2012 to deepen his pursuit of jazz and his connection with Brazilian music, and to explore the diverse musical melting pot that is New York City. So are you still doing your master's degree here?
No, I finished.
So you're
this
finished?
This I did from 2012 to 2014.
Okay.
And then I stayed, yeah.
Awesome. So, if that was enough info for you guys, we're going to give you some more.
Long.
It is long, but it's a good one. I found it to be a fantastic read. And I learned some stuff too.
Well, you guys can check on the website.
Yeah.
VitorGoncalvesmusic.com. So.
Yeah, we'll have links to the site, and I'll also talk about some of your recordings and stuff. So Vitor, thanks for being here. Thanks for hosting us. We're staying in Vitor's living room. It's wonderful. And before we get started though, you want to play us a tune?
Sure.
Cool.
So I'll play an Hermeto Pascoal tune called Louro.
Yeah, Vitor. Oh gosh, what a wonderful morning it is. You get to wake up and play accordion and hang out. So Vitor, how did you get, I think we talked a little bit about your musical beginnings and playing the guitar and going from that to the piano, to the saxophone, to the accordion. You know, did you find that, you know, one really helped the other in terms of learning these instruments and kind of, you know, creating this like musical foundation for you to go from? I mean, was it difficult to transition to all these different instruments, and what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always helpful the more experience you have with music. I think it just adds to your palette of things to be inspired by. Obviously, at one point you have to kind of choose a little bit or decide how to manage that. So that's why, for instance, I kind of soon after I moved to New York, I was like, I wasn't playing saxophone anymore. So, and then I got deeper into the accordion world and the accordion playing. So I decided just like to drop the saxophone and actually sold my instruments, which is something I don't like to do, to sell instruments. But yeah, so I mean, I don't play guitar professionally, but especially like for Brazilian music, like being able to, you know, sit down and comp and, you know, play the grooves and the right hand stuff. I think it really helps the piano play, the accordion playing. It helps me to teach a lot, you know, because a lot of times I'm teaching this music and, you know, I can actually show it to people. But also like playing, for instance, like this, what I just played, the kind of groove that I would just play in the left hand is something that a guitar player would do, you know, like arpeggiating thing. So in that sense, helps a lot, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, and the guitar is, I mean, would you say like the classical string guitar is sort of like the, not the heartbeat of like samba, but I mean, it's like one of the things that...
I think it's one of the key instruments in Brazilian culture, you know. It's not random that I started playing guitar. Like if you talk to a lot of musicians, they all like can play less than chords in the guitar. It's really part of the culture. And I mean, you mentioned some, obviously like the percussion has a huge role, but I feel like the guitar is really like the bridge between the the rhythm section and the melody and the harmonies, and it's not random that Brazil has a huge, incredible like tradition of guitar players, like really, especially nylon, nylon is the guitar. So we were just talking about last night this great album by Rafael Rabelo and Paulo Moura, and it's just like incredible guitar playing. I was just listening to it the other day. So.
Excellent. Well, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit of gear talk, for all of the accordion players out there watching, and everybody's gonna want to know, what is Vitor playing on? What kind of accordion is that? So
They're asking.
They're already asking.
It's been cleared up.
So let's just talk. Let's just like clear the air, Like, what are you playing on, Vitor?
Well, it's like so I'll give it a little background, just a little story about the instrument. So like you read, I started playing in this group of Itiberê Zwarg, which is the bass player of Hermeto Pascoal, and they encourage a lot of like the people being multi-instrumentalists in the same way like Hermeto like plays flute, flugelhorn, piano, guitar, cavaquinho, and you name it, a bunch of things. So the accordion was like a natural interest, also because of the tradition in Brazil and a lot of that music that comes from the Northeast that inspired this group and Hermeto's music. So first, like I got like a little 80 bass from a friend of mine. Her name is Agnes Mosso. She's like a vocal teacher. We worked a lot there. And then I switched to, and then I started like teaching myself, and like some friends would help. And then I moved to like a Hohner, like 120 bass, also like lent from like a teacher in school. His name is Zé Rua. And then I started to dig more, and then I found out about like all these like classical repertoire that they were playing, especially the Bach recordings of Stefan Husson,
okay,
the English suites and the Goldberg variation, and I was like, wow, what is that thing? And then I found out about like this whole free bass system that existed that I had no idea about, and I said, wow, so cool, I want to play that. And then I started like looking online, and then I found, this was like I think previous to eBay, so I found this website in Italy, and this guy Marco Lorusso, he was like selling his instrument, which turned out to be this one.
Okay.
And as we Brazilians do, like after moving to US, I realized like whenever I go to Brazil, everyone's like, "How can you bring me that? Can you bring me that? Oh, can you bring me a computer, a hard drive?" So like I asked like a ex-wife of a friend, like something. It's like, "Oh, can you bring this accordion?" It's like, "Yeah, she's Italian." Sure. So I mean, they shipped to her, and like I went to pick her up in the airport. I felt so sorry for her. A huge box, and so yeah, this is a Bulgari instrument, and it's 45 keys. It's a converter instrument, 58 notes in the left hand. Low E, 2 reeds in the left hand, and 5 reeds in the right hand. So I have the usual L, M, M high, and I have a quint reed, which is a fifth above the piccolo, which is like an open and closed switch. But just to finish the story, so it was like, wow, and then I had this huge instrument. It was like kind of like learning how to play. But then I started playing Stradale and playing, Brazilian stuff, and then, busy with other stuff and playing piano and all the musical projects. And I never really like took the time to learn the free bass. And plus, like, there's not much of a tradition of that technique in Brazil. So it wasn't until like a year and a half ago that I started like finding practice. And it's fun. Another like funny anecdote is like at one point I was decided to sell this instrument and get a smaller one. I was talking to like I've been like playing. I moved to New York. I brought this, and then I was like for a year I was like playing these gigs that ended like at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I had to take the subway in this super heavy. I don't know. It's got to be like 32 pounds or something. And then it's like, oh, I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna trade it, but. Luckily, like the 2 accordion stores I went, like they gave me like a really bad deal. Everyone's like, oh, no one wants to buy, this instrument is super heavy, like, and I said, I'm not gonna like give it away for like, $1,000 or whatever. And then I kept it, and then, you know, eventually like the opportunity came like to practice this. I went to like a musical residency with a friend of mine that I played with, Thomas Bergeron, trumpet player in New Hampshire. So we were in this farm for a week, and we were fed like 3 meals a day. We had housing, just like to rehearse for his project, his record that's not out yet. It's gonna be out soon. And then they had like practice, like a basement with practice rooms, and I said, I'm gonna like shed this. And that's how it started. Like every day, like for a week, I had my little method, and I would like wake up at 6 a.m., go to the practice room, and like go, oh man, it's like this is, and yeah.
So talking about that, what were the methods that you went through to learn freebase? I mean, what was your process?
Yeah. Well, after I moved to New York, I took a few lessons with Victor Prieto, which was like really like a key change in my accordion player. Really like changed my whole perception of the instrument. And one of the things he made me do is like this Fugaza method, edited by Bourbon, this publisher in Italy. This was like Stradello. So he said, oh, this publisher has a lot of accordion stuff. So at one point I went there and researched like if they had like a method. So they had like I think the guy's name is Dizio, Alessandro Dizio or something. Okay. So I just ordered it, I bought, and it showed like the basic fingers, and you know, it had like some little pieces, just more or less how the other method that I did with Victor was structured. So yeah, that's how it started. But then I met this guy, Ivan Filipchenko or something. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. So Evan, this accordion repair that was living in New York for a while, he said, oh man, there's this great guy. So I showed him things that I was working with a freebase, and said, there's this great Russian dude, like young guy, just moved to New York. He's been going to Brooklyn Accordion Club. Mm-hmm. Actually, did you get in touch with them?
No, I should have.
Oh.
Yeah, we're in Brooklyn.
Yeah. There's really good people. May, she runs the club. Anyway, so I went to see a concert that he was playing with this incredible Chinese accordion player, Hanzi. And then I got in touch with him, and then we met up for a couple lessons, and he actually showed me like a different way of fingering that completely different from the book.
Okay.
And then it was very helpful, and that was it. And then the rest I was just trying to figure out myself. Yeah.
It's heavy stuff. But apparently it can be done, you know. If you're...
I mean, it's kind of, it was like really humbling to me. I mean, I have a lot to go, and you heard like all the mistakes I made here.
I didn't hear anything.
But it's kind of like humbling, like to start like a new thing. And every time like I'm teaching like my students, like I think of like this process I've been going through like this past year and a half. And it's like, wow, in the beginning was like so frustrating. I couldn't do like, you know, a major scale, and you know, now I can play something. And how do you go through that process, how the progress happens, and like you said, yeah, it can be done. It's just, you just need to be focused and spend time.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that so many like great players forget is what it's like to be a beginner, because you get to be so good that, you know, as a teacher, you don't remember what it was like for the person who's like just starting and doesn't have all of the sort of background and info that you have. So even having your background and info and all of your musical knowledge, it's still just like physically being able to play an instrument and getting back to sort of square one, or not necessarily.
Exactly. It's actually like learning a completely new instrument, like completely half of the instrument completely new. So yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Yeah.
So people, you got to learn other instruments, and you got to know what it feels like to be a beginner again, to help your students out, you know.
I think like I mean this is kind of like an extreme thing, like what we just described, like really being a beginner. But even like just getting the concept, even though not so extreme, like getting yourself out of your comfort zone is like, it's a really, I feel it's a really important thing as a musician to do, you know, because like you said, you grow up, you're playing gigs, you're like living your life, you're doing the things that you do, but you know, then what? You know, then what's the next thing? You know, you gotta like step out of your like comfort zone. Both as like, you know, in life choices, I think, but also like even like in moments, you know, like we were also talking yesterday about like how like sometimes in performance situations like you really get like morphed into the thing, but I think it takes some of that step like to really, you know, it's something I try to do. I just try to do now, and a lot of times it doesn't go well. It's like, you know, but I would rather go for the risk and risk not being going well, and what does that mean? But in other ways, like not going well, I should say not go with what was planned, you know. So yeah, I think that all those things relate to that story we were telling about being a beginner.
Sure. Well, I want to talk some more about some of your like technique stuff and some of the things about Brazilian music and also the projects you have going on. And I mean, I could talk for a long time about kind of what you're doing here because I think it's really something amazing also to be playing out here in New York. But would you mind playing another tune for us?
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna play this Choro ballad by this composer called Cachimbinho, and the name of the song is Ternura, Tenderness.
Nice, man. So, I want to talk about a little bit about your like left hand techniques and some of the things that I want to talk about some of the stuff that you think is sort of the core of like Brazilian music, and I think for most people that's, you know, some type of samba or even bossa nova. But you know, we have a lot of, I think, people in the States who play, you know, accordion arrangements of tunes like Tico Tico or like of Brazil or something. And somehow or another, you know, these things have gotten sort of, I don't want to say watered down, but sort of like Americanized a little bit. And you hear people playing this sort of really straight, like left-hand stuff. And it kind of makes the tunes like sound not so Brazilian to me. And so I want to talk about like what are like the core rhythms when you're talking to somebody who's just like starting to get into Brazilian music. What are the things to listen for and to be aware of? We've talked about like sort of the Brazilian clave thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think, I mean, as a general thing, before going to specifics, I think it's important, like, to keep it a little fluid. You know, what I mean by fluid is like it's more spontaneous, more variations, not just like be locked with one thing. You know, obviously there are some patterns that are like they're reference points, and I mean you should know them and you should play around them. But in general, I think you shouldn't get stuck with like one pattern, just repeating it in the left hand. I think that's what it probably causes what you were describing. So you said tico tico, so you know, I think the typical pattern, and there's nothing wrong with the pattern, is that just like diverging a little bit. So there's all that, and there's also like one thing that we should address is like and we talked a lot about that. It's like how short are the notes, the accents, and this. I mean, even like in a pattern like that. So this is really fundamental, because if you leave it too long, then it just gets like watered down. So one fundamental thing in this samba dash choro world, it's like the first beat is short. So you can play with that. I started like even like varying that. Like I started with this short, long, and then like for some point, dun 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 dun. You know, so all these things, it's what I refer to like being fluid, you know, like, and you're playing, literally like playing with it, you know, so it gives a little life and flavor, you know, and obviously that's not easy, you know, especially if you're not from the culture, but I mean, it's if you want to get deep, you should like search that. You should listen to music and you know find players and like what we were saying about being beginners, it's like totally possible. You know, I've met like many Americans that I mean, if I close my eyes and listen to them playing, like I cannot tell that they're American. So this is like so what I was saying. This is the articulation and the accents and stuff. In terms of pattern, so like even if you take this simple pattern that I just played, this syncopation thing. So if you take out one of those notes, you have. So you know, just by that's what I mean by fluid. So you do tum ta tum ta tum ta tum ta ta tum ta ta tum ta tum ta tum ta, you know. It's like here and there, like finding some things like so you're not like boxed in, you know. So this, and then all of a sudden you can create phrases with that. So like tum ta tum ta tum ta tum ta ta tum ta tum ta tum. So it's like 3 of one thing and then 1 of the other, or it could be whatever, like you know, like 4-bar phrase or 8 bars, you know. Or I throw this as the end of an 8-bar cycle, like you know, tum ga ta tum da ta tum da ta tum da ta tum. Something that kind of breathes a little bit. This is one thing. The other thing, just taking from that simple pattern, you can take out the second one, so that we. I don't know the song somewhere. Yeah, this, I mean, it's just, maybe like in a faster tempo it's not so effective, but for like slower tunes. Another thing, like you could do, and put the second note in like in a bass note, so. Sorry. Anyway, I'm like a little rusty in Stradella. I didn't just playing through this. So this is one thing. Just keeping that pattern, but like varying a little bit, taking like some notes out, varying with the basses. You know, just playing thirds and fifths. You know, playing pickup notes in the bass, which would be that kind of thing, which more or less the same pattern. Then like another thing is it's a samba pattern. That's what you were talking about, the clave. So there's not like an exact pattern that I mean, like I said, everything is like a lot fluid. You know, if you ask 2 different percussionists, they might give you different patterns, but they all share like a similar structure. So so to me, I like to think this is a basic. So it's 1 and 2. Ta 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 this already like, and then you can mix this with the other, you know, you can do. So this is another yeah, but you gotta watch out. This pattern that I just played, like it can be played like, so it's a 2-bar pattern. So let's call it A-B. So the way I just played, ta 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 ta, that's the A, and then the B, ta 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 ta. So the second part, the B, is like ta ta ta. So if I play BA instead of AB, then I have ta 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 3 4 ta 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 ta. So you gotta watch out for that, you know, so you're not playing like with the wrong direction. And just to give it short, like a lot of times the melody will indicate that, but I feel like the best guide is like where the harmonic change is resolved. So for instance, if you have a 2-5-1, like a D minor to G7, so if you are doing a harmonic rhythm like this, so that I play what I call AB. So the resolution has got to be in that anticipated note. Pa. So this is the 1 chord. 2, 5, 1. 2, 5, 1. So, but if instead of that I had like 1 bar of D minor, 1 bar of G7, and 1 bar of C major, if I played the order I played, AB, it would be like this. So I'm resolving the 1 chord on the downbeat instead of the anticipated note. Instead of resolving pa, I'm resolving the part that's pa. So that's kind of like too stiff and weird. So instead, so I'm gonna switch the order. So instead of pa 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 pa, I'm gonna start pa 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 pa. So pa pa pa. So then I'm kind of like lined up with the pattern. There's a lot of confusion about it. You know, a lot of people they don't like to talk in those terms. Like they say that Brazilian music doesn't have clave, and this is wrong. And there's even some divergences on that issue. But that's my view. You know, from listening and from observing and I think most of the people that are really rooted in Brazil, they do all that stuff without even thinking, you know. I was kind of aware of that while I was there through observation, but after I moved here and I started teaching people, then I became even more aware of that, you know. And I see like other people teaching, I've seen some people teaching that they don't have that clear, and like, I mean, I see the confusion. Sure. Like it happened to me. It's this great cavaquinho player, like amazing, super groove monster, and he was like showing to like 2 Chinese, and the guy was like, wait a minute, but there's I took it from this AB from this Chinese guy actually. It's like, but there's 2 parts, right? And then the guy was like, no, like, but play it. And then they play, it's like, no, but you started here, and it's, no, I didn't start, you know, so, like, he played it all natural, but he didn't have it conceptualized, so, like, it was hard, like, to convey the message, and I was, like, looking from, you know, like, I was passing by, and I said, excuse me, I think, like, this what happened, and then the guy said, oh, yeah, oh, okay, so, you know.
There's 2 parts.
There is, I mean, so, and there's another detail, like, well, since we live here, like, maybe people are bored, but because of when we are playing 1 bar of D minor, 1 bar of G, C, because the pattern doesn't start in the downbeat, although I'm playing the bass on the downbeat, you know, a lot of instruments that play that pattern, they're not playing 2 parts, you know, the guitar would play 2 parts, but percussion player might not play 2 parts. They might play just their chord part. So because it starts with pa, so it's really confusing. If I don't count you off, like you won't know where the 1 is. So there's a way they do this it's like introducing, only the first time they play, they introduce a measure that starts in the downbeat. And Van der Ley, this drummer that was playing last night with me, he coined like a term, he calls it kick-off pattern, which could be both like 4/8 notes, so it would be so I start with 4/8 notes, and then I play the B part of the pattern, and then the B part, and then I'm good, you know. So this is the way. So yeah.
We had that issue Jamie and I were talking last night about with that tune Vestido Longo, when it kind of kicked off, because it's, you know, so we were just kind of listening, and we didn't do the kickoff pattern, and I kind of had to remember the, like, you know, how we talked about the count off the other day, which was the 1, right? You know, the counting the anticipated part.
Yeah, just to fill people in. Like I was telling Gabe a story about Anat Cohen she went to record with João Bosco, which is a legendary guitar player and composer in Brazil, singer, and she said that he would be playing the groove and would count off over the groove on the recording. So like when you start the tune, we're already grooving instead of just like a click track, you know. And his count off was like he was playing this groove like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you know this sense of like 1 being that anticipated note, that's really key for that style. You know, that's where you land. That's where the phrases land. You know, if you improvise, you know. So that kind of thing, you know. So I mean, sometimes you will do like the downbeat, but this is like the more natural place to resolve.
Sure.
You know? So yeah.
Well, on that note, you want to play us another tune?
Sure. Let's see if I can play that. Talk about like getting out of the comfort zone. That's a Lyle Mays tune called Chorinho.
Lyle Mays.
Yeah, a piano player that plays with Pat McLean.
Oh, cool.
Used to play.
So, speaking of great, kind of great players, you know, what's your experience been like living in New York, living in the States, playing music with people, and you know, how has the accordion been received too in your sort of musical life, you know?
I mean, it's great. It's an amazing place to be. You know, obviously like super vibrant scene and a lot happening. You meet a lot of interesting people. And you asked how is, so just like mentioning some of like people I work with. I'm lucky enough to work a lot with Anat Cohen. There's some videos for folks who want to check it out. One of her groups is called Choro Aventuroso. And there's a nice video that we did at Jazz and Lincoln Center. I think you posted one, a clip of that on the email about this interview. So I also work with her 10-piece band. She just put out a record. Actually, that first tune I played this morning is featured on that record. There's like an accordion feature. There's like Berto's tune. Another great guy that I'm fortunate to work with is Jotan Silberstein, a great guitar player. He's played with like everyone I could possibly imagine. And he's like a musical encyclopedia and knows like a million tunes, jazz tunes, Brazilian tunes, Argentinian tunes. So we just did a record with a great band, Daniel Dorr on drums, John Patitucci on bass, and Jotan, and Glenn Zaleski played also piano in it, so we kind of shared. And you asked how the accordion was received, and it's actually like, as I mentioned before, like after moving here, I think New York is a great place that it kind of like pushes you to be unique in a way, to like find a unique personality, unique feature of your artistry, because there's so much happening, and I feel like the environment is like super open to like to different things, like to, you know, Brazilian music, African music, or Arabic music, or whatever. It's like I wrote on my bio, like it's really a melting pot. So I think the accordion kind of like came to like fill this place for me, you know, like being able to like play piano and play accordion and bring all that music from Brazil, but also like tons of other interests, and you know, kind of like be able to put that in the mix. So the accordion, in that philosophical sense, but also in the practical sense, it started to be like a much bigger part of my life. In the practical sense, I mean, like I got a lot of gigs because I played accordion, and also because there weren't like that many accordion players here. So I started playing with French singers that were like doing like the French jazzy repertoire, or you know, a little bit of gypsy jazz and that kind of stuff. I joined the Choro group, which is called Regional of New York. We can put links to that. We have a record out with amazing guests. Anat Cohen is one of them. Fred Hirsch is another one. So for people who doesn't know what Choro is, it's like a particular Tico Tico, for instance. It's part of the Choro repertoire. It's this kind of music that kind of predates samba. That sort of is parallel to New Orleans jazz here. And it kind of like, the tradition kept on evolving, and it's still alive and very present, and it's really one of the biggest foundations of Brazilian music, that tradition. So we have this sort of like traditional group with 7-string guitar, pandeiro, which is the kind of tambourine, the cavaquinho, which is similar to ukulele. I play accordion, and there's a great Israeli flute player. So this is regional of New York. So yeah, I started playing that music more and more, and like I was just playing accordion in the group, and yeah, and so yeah, I think the accordion was well received. I mean, every time I play like a gig with Anat Tentat, and I play that feature in Loro, it's like, you know, everyone's like, oh, the accordion is so cool, wow, I love the accordion, and that's so beautiful, and it's like, I never heard an accordion played like this, and you know, I think people are really open to it. It's kind of somehow like a novelty. It's like a different thing that comes up in that context, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think kind of going on that the general perspective that if anybody has seen the accordion at, like, you know, in the States, they kind of tend to view it like as a novelty thing, but not necessarily like in a positive way. It's sort of like noveltized and you know, kind of like a comical sort of instrument and then a folk instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I think every time that that sort of that stigma is like challenged in a good way, people are responsive to that. They go, oh, I didn't know the accordion could sound like that.
Exactly,
you know?
I hear this all the time, yeah. And I think it's really positive, and I mean, and it's nice that this organization, I think it pushes for that, like sort of encourages like this broad picture of the accordion. And I mean, we were talking about this also too these days. Like, I have nothing against the traditional styles or whatever they are, polka or zydeco or whatever it is, you know, and they're great, you know. But we shouldn't think that the accordion is limited to that, you know. And you know, I was telling you about this great classical accordion player that I really like, this Italian guy called Claudio Iacomucci, and then like searching online I found that he has a journal called Modern Accordion Perspectives, and I told you about one article written by like a French guy that he was kind of complaining that, you know, the French scene was like so strong, the novelty, the variety music, mm-hmm. that kind of like didn't give much space for the, you know, modern classical music accordion. And there was another article by this young, I think he's a student of Claudio, young accordion player that premieres a lot of new pieces. And he was like, oh, I'm sick that every time I tell people that I play accordion, they ask me, oh, do you play tango? Like, you know, like if it's the only thing. Mm-hmm. Though I don't agree with like this super like strong reaction, I think, you know, I wouldn't be offended if, but
sure.
But anyway, I think that kind of like shows that thing that we were talking about, like the kind of like stereotype thing that when you say accordion, it's like, oh, that's, and then your mind actually associates, oh, it's tango, it's polka, it's, mm-hmm. And I think that the instrument gained a lot from those genres, and it's great, and I really like, you know, a lot of the stuff that's played, but I think this immediate association, maybe, you know, it's not the, I don't know, I think it works against a little bit.
Sure, and it was surprising to hear that kind of perspective echoed in Europe, because like I think for us in the States, we think of as Europe as being sort of like one of these accordion kind of mecca places.
Exactly.
But to kind of hear that there is still like certain types of, whether it's like certain types of stigma, whether it's a genre or something else, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think those people are really like hardcore classical players, and especially that young Italian guy is like really devoted to new music. Mm-hmm. So I think their reaction comes from that world, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know much of the classical world, but I notice when I search online that it's still like it's probably even in Europe, it's like still an unusual instrument that you don't see in concert halls, speaking like through the classical world perspective, mm-hmm. you know. So I think a lot of people, like, for instance, they don't know like that there's the free bass accordion that can play Bach and can play this, and like the accordion concertos, like it's not for, I think in a different degree, I would guess that probably happens in Europe. Mm-hmm. Or Canada, that's like a place that there's a bigger accordion, not a bigger, but a more broad accordion mm-hmm. tradition. So yeah.
Well, we're getting kind of close to the. I know we're towards the second half of our program. What's our time like? Where are we at?
It's been almost an hour.
So we should do another tune, and then I want to chat a little bit about. I have some member questions to field to you,
Okay.
and then we can play a tune together, and then we'll call it. And Vitor
alright.
is extremely nice to do this for us today because he's going to a recording session after this too. So we got a boogie. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm starting to wake up now. This thing's great. So, I have a couple of questions on the email here. I think I have it pulled up in a window. And, Jamie, you mind fielding those for us here?
Yeah. It's from Edward, right?
There's 4 of them, yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Let me get in there real quick. You can always edit this stuff out, yeah. So, yeah, there's these. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's start with, what is that one? From
Edward.
Ed Petrowski, is that right?
Tarski.
What do we got?
Okay, so question. It has always been a pet peeve of mine that on the left hand of the accordion has become completely neglected with many accordion recordings. Chords, bass lines, even occasional bass solos hardly ever used, with many players becoming one-handed piano players. With the sophistication of recording equipment, why do you think accordionists either don't use the left hand or do not take the time to ensure that their left hand playing isn't balanced in the actual recording?
So what's the why don't they take time to like learn, or why isn't balanced in the recording?
It sounds like he's wondering about, I think what it sounds like is he's talking about a lot of accordion players being sort of right hand only kind of players and not, hitting the left hand a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think that's been always like my, I was always like interested in like the possibilities of the left hand, and always trying like to be a strong player, and definitely it's a big challenge. And it still is a big challenge for me coming from the piano, because yeah, here is like it's pretty similar, although it is challenging also, like in terms of like the distance, the position. I try like to not look at my right hand a lot when I'm playing, so that I don't have neck pain, and I think it's important like to feel. But definitely the left hand is like it's way harder, because it's like what we were talking about, like being a beginner. So now I'm a beginner like playing free bass, and when I started playing accordion stradella, I was a beginner in the left hand. And but I was always like searching for like for chord combinations, like what I could do, like combining chords. I mean, we didn't talk much about it, but one thing that I probably now I'm super rusty, but I loved like research. It's how you could play the same chord progression using the basses and the counter bass. So I would play 2 5s, like D minor to G7 to C major. I'm already using combinations here, like D minor and A minor, and then what is that? G7 and D minor. But then how would I do if I wanted like a B? Because in the beginning I was like teaching myself, I didn't know that it was like super common, like all these jumps. Plus it was hard for me to jump from D to B, I mean still is. So I started to go, so maybe you can play D minor over B, and then here I can do, because my accordion is like shifted, so I'm gonna do like C sharp minor and F sharp.
Okay.
I don't even know what is that. I have to think. Do you want to? That's a diminished chord. I think it's a C sharp diminished, and then a D sharp minor. Okay. So that's a dominant chord, So I was, and then B major would be D sharp over B. So I would practice all these things, and like nobody showed me, but I want to like to have like a good grip of the left hand. Obviously, when you're playing like in a large group, that you have like a guitar player, a bass player, a keyboard player, whatever. I mean, naturally, what he's talking about, I think, even if the guy is like a really strong left-hand player, I think naturally it's going to be buried a little bit because of sound, issues. Because those frequencies are competing with like a guitar player with a bass player. But I share the same. Like I wanted like to know what people are doing. I would even like those Fahar records by Young Fahar. I was like, I cannot really hear the left hand what this guy's doing, and I would try like to find records that the instrumentation was smaller so that I could hear more. And so a lot of like videos I see, like the guys just like even like a lot of Dominguinhos videos, like they just stick one mic in the right hand and there's not another mic, and I share the same issues. Like I don't know why.
I think you did touch on like probably the thing though is like with accordion recordings, if they're in a band setting, you know, your left hand is going to be hopefully doing the same thing that the bass and the rhythm section is doing. So, you know, maybe it's not quite as essential to have, or it could be, like you're saying, kind of getting in the way of those frequencies too.
Yeah, but I mean, I always like when I'm improvising, like either playing Stradella or playing free bass. Even if I'm in a band, I'm always challenging myself. No, I gotta play the left hand because it's like a two-hand instrument, you know.
Right.
So, and but it's hard, you know, especially when you're improvising, because like your mind is like so focused on what you're trying to do here, then it's easy to forget. So I, just for the sake of my interest, even if, like you said, if it won't come out to the audience so much because there's a lot happening, but I'm always like trying to, and with the free bass even more, like I try like to play counter lines and stuff. So I really try to integrate, just as you don't see like a piano player only playing with his right hand.
I actually think the free bass makes it easier to play. Not easier, but I think it's able to fit in better than the Stradella because like the flexibility of your voicings and pitches in terms of like, you know, you have a easier variety of like pitch levels, you know. You don't have
you can have like single lines or stuff that, you know, it's like you're getting out of the range of a guitar player, for instance, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
What else you got?
So there's another question that kind of leads into that from Dan, and he says that he hasn't been able to find any jazz resources specifically written for free bass accordion. Most people suggest using jazz piano literature. What's your experience and what would you recommend? That's the first question. And then do you have any tips for players who are familiar with the layout of a free bass system but want to jump from classical to jazz music?
Gabe and I were also talking about that, like about like accordion methods, and I mean, perhaps you want to say a little bit. You made a point that.
Well, I'm sort of in the camp of like, yeah, I think, you know, you sort of do have to go to some jazz piano books, and if we're talking about jazz harmony, I mean, the piano players are the guys who are doing it, so certainly you can get a lot of stuff out of a jazz piano type book. However, I think they're, you know, not having played free bass, that there may be some insights that you've experienced or.
Yeah, I don't know about any literature for jazz and the free bass. In fact, I think there's not a lot of players doing it. I've encountered some which are great, mainly like Julien Labro, which is great French accordion player. I used to live in Chicago, now living in New York. I recommend checking him out. I've seen like some European players, like I don't even know his name, but I've seen like a Finnish player playing like a Gilberto piece using free bass. So exactly, basically like what I was doing is like, it was like transferring my knowledge from the piano to the accordion, you know. So in that case, it's much more direct than the Stradella, because you know, the Stradella you sort of like have to find your chord combination, your like what is possible to do. I mean, obviously free bass, there are some limitation. Mainly, I think the main limitation as opposed to the piano is you don't have the pedal,
right? So
you cannot hold a note and sting. So there are other ways around this. I mean, I haven't done a lot, but you can do like this Stradella rolls, you know, and then like, because then, so where is it? So you know, you can have like a lower note here and play higher chords here. That's one thing.
Sure.
I use this a little bit. There's on an arrangement I did for Rosa Morena, this Brazilian tune. But so yeah, basically like transferring from the piano, and like some tips. Like I started basically like doing shell chords, like which is 1, 5, 3 kind of thing, or minor. And then, or the fifth could be a 7, so you know, like so major 7 or minor 7. So basically those kind of could be like an open position, like 1, 7, 3, or could be 1, 3, 7, depends on the range. So just like playing harmonies, like with that, you know, I was mainly focused on that. And it was interesting. Again, we talked about like teaching, and then I was teaching this young accordion player in Brazil. His name is Lucas. That just started, like he got a Giulietti with 3 extra rows, and he started playing free bass before Stradella. And actually he got me into like playing like the left hand piano voices with no root. You know, I played a lot of that in the gig last night. So like a G minor would be like F, A, B flat, and D. So you would have the G. You know, I can't play the G because, you know. So that kind of thing, those kind of voices, you know, 2, 5 does this, you know. It's nice to practice that and be able to solo over it.
A lot of this stuff is really like laid out in things like jazz voicings for piano keyboard by Frank Mantooth. I mean, this is stuff that is just like super indicative of like playing jazz piano in the left hand, and I think that I hear people get a little bit discouraged when they're looking for an accordion book and you tell them to get a piano book, like it's not going to be the right thing. But in the case of playing, you know, jazz music, it's, you know, we're talking about just harmonic like voice leading and stuff that really should apply whether you're playing the guitar, the piano, or the accordion. But for accordion players, it would seem like the most comfortable thing to read and kind of conceptualize would be piano music if you're playing free bass.
And I totally agree. And even if you're playing Stradella, I would say the same thing. Like you can get a lot of concepts, you know, from that. And if you're smart and kind of like bridge the gap, because you find that a lot of those right hand voices, they involve like certain kinds of triads, you know, that you could try to adapt here, you know.
Absolutely.
And then one, I mean, I can't fail to mention like Victor Prieto, which is like my first teacher here. You know, really changed my playing, and he has this like beautiful way of like combining triads that he created and calls it chord approach with both hands, which I don't know where he took it from, but it's like I can see like totally the link between the piano, you know, if you play like, you know, a D minor triad here and a C major triad, and then you play a G7 chord and then a D flat triad. This is things I would do on my piano player. I would play an F, B, and then a D flat, you know, and then the bass player would play G, you know.
Right.
So that kind of thing, even for Stradella, you know, you can get a lot of ideas, and then you resolve in like a C major on the left and D major on the right. So, and I mean, not free bass, obviously, that the connection is like super straightforward.
Right.
Yeah.
What else we got? I think there's 2 more emails.
Yeah, and he also asked, and I think that we already said this, but one more time, what kind of system, free bass system do you have?
Oh, I didn't say. It's a C system, so also called Italian system, where the low notes are on the top. Which is funny, like, because it's a mirror thing of the keyboard, so I'm trying to develop a lot of like Brazilian groups in the left hand using free bass.
Like you're used to playing the bottom with your pinky, I bet.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So I would encounter this when I was playing Stradella, because some like the half diminished chord, like the shape is like this, so that would appear. But here is actually over time. So like if I'm trying like to arpeggiate the chord, like first stuff we were talking about using inspired by the guitar. So this is like stuff that I do on the piano, but in the piano it's completely opposite. You know, doo-doo-doo, the arpeggio is like this, and now I'm arpeggiating. It's in the beginning was a little mind confusing, but I mean you get used to it.
The accordion's full of confusing stuff. I had a student the other day, and I go, no, you got to go up, and he's going this way, and I was like, actually up is down. I was like, what kind of world do we live in where we're saying up is down, man?
I don't know, maybe if I would go back in time, maybe if, I hear a lot of folks saying, oh, I picked the B system because I come from the piano.
Mm-hmm.
Actually makes sense because that's closer to the piano.
Sure.
But then then you're playing the bottom of the bass part all the time, which is less comfortable than playing up here.
Yeah.
So it's like, same thing we were talking about. The accordion has so many different systems and, each of them have disadvantages.
Sure. So. Okay, who else we got?
Okay, we got Amy Jo Sawyer. She wants to know, Anat is coming to St. Louis on April 10th, and she wants to know if you're going to be.
I'm there, yeah.
There we go,
And
Amy
she wants
Jo.
to know if you were going to be playing piano or accordion.
I'll be playing both. It's actually that stuff I was telling you about, the reception of the accordion, and I get to play both in this group, so it's nice.
Cool, I think
So say hi when you're there.
Yeah, Amy Jo. Is that about all we got? Wasn't there another one?
Oh, yeah, Judy from Santa Fe.
Oh, Santa Fe, I've been there. Maybe I met her.
She was asking how you developed dexterity and your quickness on your right hand side. If you had any specific exercises.
Those are secrets.
for
Those are special secrets.
That comes from the piano playing, really, and I studied classical piano. It wasn't my first thing, but when I went to undergrad, I did in classical piano, so that helped a lot. I was never doing technique methods sometimes I play around trying to get my 4th and 5th fingers stronger, but not super disciplined in that. Just by playing the repertoire in the piano and the accordion, the same thing.
One of the things I notice about your right hand playing is that the variety of articulation that you get, and just this is something that I've heard from a few different some different teachers and some different people, is this idea that in order to get quickness, you can't be pressing the key down all the way flat, all the way like you would on a piano. You have to be a little bit lighter on the keys, and I kind of see the way that you articulate, and it gives it a nice sort of clean and crisp sort of sound even in your lines.
Yeah, this is another transition from the piano. I think I can say I'm a little better on this now because you really have to switch the key in your mind because nothing that, like you said, it won't have any effect on the sound playing stronger. So at first I used to play too hard and unconsciously I accented here. So I think throughout I kind of try to be more relaxed and really take advantage that the sound is all here. So I guess that would be one thing I didn't think about as being something that would give me more dexterity, but it makes sense what you're saying. And in terms of articulation, I think it's really key with the instrument because it's we have some limitations because we have one air for both sides, so that the amount of independence it's limited in relationship to the piano. So I think the articulation is really a key thing to get the sounds that you want and kind of balance both hands. I've seen actually, we're talking a lot about Frank Morocco, this guy in Brazil, friends on Facebook with him, he's obsessed with Frank, has everything. And he posted a video of him showing someone a hang in his house, and he talks about that, about how articulation really like affects the balance between the two hands, and he gives some examples. It's really
Well, yeah, if you use your bellows to pull and accent something in the left hand, and you're holding it in the right hand, it's going to be accented in the right hand
so
too.
if
You
play
know?
short. So again, like I was mentioning, like Stefan Husong and the English suites. Like if you hear that, it's incredible. It sounds like he has dynamic independence of both hands, but it's all through articulation, and it's just beyond what I think.
Well, man, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you have a
It's
recording
good.
thing,
I don't know.
and
Okay.
and we should play a tune also.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get any questions from the chat, did we?
No, you talked about them pretty much
Okay.
as they were happening.
Okay. Do you just want to set up a groove and then we'll just hit the head? Doing the intro.
Yeah.
Vitor, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Thanks so much for
pleasure.
having us,
Yeah.
and what a great time. Hope everybody enjoyed it. See you next time.
Thank you.